Welcome to part 2, inline styling or cascading style sheets. The essential outcomes for chapter 2. You will create and design web pages by applying inline CSS styling to HTML tags and section tags by inserting the language, image browser tab, and metadata tags, distinguishing block elements from inline elements, establishing web page sections, styling web page sections and HTML tags using the proper values and property names, creating a button using JavaScript programming language. Welcome to section 2-2. We are looking at sections of a web page. Sections of a web page contain 4 basic sections. You have your header, which houses the name of your website, your nav bar, which houses the relative links for your website, your div, which houses all the various content sections on a website. And if you notice inside your div tag, you can also have div sections. And then last, your footer, which houses the footer information such as copyright, author, etc., etc. The header section. First, don't confuse the header section with the head tag. They are two different tags. The head tag follows the English tag, and the head tag talks to the browser. The header section goes between your opening and closing body tags, and it is used to define your title for your actual web page. The header is where you're going to put the actual name of your web page. If you look at the example, notice on lines 27 we have our opening header tag, and then on line 31 we have our closing header tag. In between those two tags on line 29 we have the name of our website, which is encased in the H1 heading style. Note the H1 tag is indented. As a new designer, you want to make sure that you are lining up your codes so that you can tell when you have an opening and where's your closing. The nav bar. The nav bar follows the header section. The nav bar may be above the header section or directly below. In this case, the nav bar is below the header section. Everything that you put on your website has to be put into a section. So in this case, if we look at our nav bar, we have on line 33, we have the HTML tag nav, and then on line 42, we have a closing nav tag. And then in between, we have placed our unordered list, which houses our relative links. The next section I will discuss is the footer. We will come back to the div section. It's a little bit more complicated, so we'll do the footer and then we'll do the div section. The footer is at the bottom of the site, and it includes the copyright date, website designed by, the last update for a site, all rights reserved, contact information, and other such information as address, telephone, fax numbers. That's all optional depending on what you want included in your footer. If you notice on line 66, we have our opening footer section tag. Then on line 70, we have our closing footer section tag. Taking a look at our div section, we know that we have sections on our web page. All the major information that we want users to read or download must be inside a section tag. The div section houses all of the main objects on the website, with the exception of the header, the nav bar, and the footer. The div section has a container. Okay, so we're kind of looking at what we looked at before as far as how a website's set up. We know that we have the header. We know we have sections. All right. We know we have relative links and we have footer. Now, if you look at the sections, we have a container tag. All right, let's look specifically at the div section ID container property value. Property values work very similar to HTML attributes. However, property values are not HTML coding, but CSS coding. Property values allow you to begin to style your web page. The div section ID container tag allows you to control movement on your web page. If we look at this example, following the closing nav tag, we are going to set up our first div tag. And this div tag is on line 44. And we will start with a left angle, type in div, and then we'll do our property value, ID equals, and then the property name, which will be container, and that will be put in quotation marks, followed by a right angle. Then we're going to go all the way down to the bottom, and right above the closing body tag, we're going to close out that div tag. So now what has happened is this whole section from line 44 to the closing div tag is held in one container. Now let's talk about additional div tags. We start with our container tag. If you remember, we just put in our div ID equals container tag. But now we want to separate out these blocks of text so that we have more control over what we do with them. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add some additional div tags to try to control the flow of our data or our objects that are in this web page. So the first div tag we're going to set up will be for where I have my image. So I will set up a div tag followed by an ID equals, and I will call this div1. Following the image tag, I'm going to close this div tag out, and so I'll have /div1. Now I have a container tag with one additional div tag housed inside it. So this is like adding rooms to a house. You have your overall house structure, and then now let's say we just put in the kitchen. So without using CSS styling, the sections added at this point does not change the appearance of your site. So even though right now you are adding these separate div sections, understand they will still look the same until you learn how to style them, which will be upcoming. So let's put in the living room. So we're going to add a second div tag. We'll call this div space ID equals div2, and then we'll put text in there that will be what we want in this particular tag. And then we can add the bedroom, so then we'll add a div tag that says ID equals div3. If we wanted to, we could add some more additional div tags as well until we completed the house. So the container tag is the structure, and then the individual sections, div1, div2, div3, div4, these are the rooms inside your container tag. And then we have to make sure that we close out that div container tag. So if you look at how I have this set up, I'm lining up all of my div tags so that I can see very carefully the opening div tag and the closing. When you start adding these sections inside your container tag, you can get lost really easy. So make sure that you can line these up. Like in the first div1 section, I indented the image tag, I tabbed it in so that I could see that I had a closing and an opening div tag. And I did that for each section. You have just finished section 2-2. Now it's time to continue on with your PowerPoint activity. Go to your Chapter 2 folder, open up the website called My First Web Page. Set up the 4 sections for the website. Make sure you put the H1 tag inside the header section. Put the unordered list inside the nav section. You create the footer section and add the necessary information. Add the div tag with the ID for the container section. E, inside the div container section, create 3 div tags with the ID, div property value, and name. 4, make the text or move the text into the appropriate div sections. Save your document and launch it in Chrome. Try it out in 2 other browsers. Validate your codes in the HTML validator. Then call me over to review your work. You are doing a great job. You have just finished section 2-2. When I have reviewed your work, please move on to the next section, 2-3.